Thank you. So there's several items we are going to cover this evening. First and foremost, the Farmers Market Commission has undergone a strategic planning process, much like the City of Moscow strategic planning process. And that really has given us the foundation to then do some review and analysis to give some better information or to lay the foundation for a recommendation regarding fees that the council has requested. So take you through the planning process first, a little review and analysis of how we got to our recommendation, and then of course the recommendation would follow. As noted, the strategic planning process that the City of Moscow underwent started with looking at some of the good things that are going on, and we looked at the farmers market value in that same aspect. One of the things that was completed over the summer as part of the strategic planning process was an economic impact report completed by Stephen Peterson at the University of Idaho. Gave us some economic drivers that were determined through the market. We've got both conservative and a bit more liberal estimates there, looking at items such as jobs, anywhere from 94 to 128 jobs that the market creates, how that relates to salary payments, annual visitor spending, 4.1 million up to 8.2 million. Some of the visitor numbers as well, and these are hard numbers, these are snapshots in time, 84,000 in 2003 and 164,000 in 2013. That could have been a rainy versus a sunny day, could have been a couple different factors there, but we think we're definitely seeing some growth over the years. And then the overall economic impact was estimated at either 3.94 conservatively or the 5.46 on the upper end there. So just putting some numbers to the generation that we thought the market was helping us create in the economic sense, which has helped us look forward at, okay, what's the value in both the economic and the social aspects. When we look at the social side of it, our community branding project that we engaged with the Chamber of Commerce and the University of Idaho noted that one of the top three things that people recognize about Moscow are the University of Idaho, the farmers market, and then our sense of place, or with arts events, sense of inclusion. Our resolution spoke to that this evening as well. But farmers market is definitely one of the top three that people recognize Moscow for Moscow. And also, our farmers market has won awards time and again. We're the oldest market in Idaho. We got the #1 market in the state of Idaho for the 6th year in a row, and we're one of the top 15 farmers markets in the nation. So all speaks to that social and that economic side and how important those two are to us in the market. So when we started with our strategic planning, taking that value into consideration, the Commission focused very much like the City of Moscow did, looking at the driving forces and trends that are going on, the market as an economic driver, service delivery in the market, and the market's role in that placemaking, that sense of Moscow and who we are. This document also was the first, we believe, that put together a more comprehensive history of the market and the accomplishments over the years. And that's actually the bulk of the document, and it's nice to have all of that in one place now. That was quite an endeavor, so that's exciting to have that checked off the list. Those desired legacies also were fueled by the mission and values of the farmers market, and these were in place. The Commission had done an excellent job of establishing these prior and reconfirmed their commitment to them, specifically the values of access to produce for community members, economic opportunity, community, and information. So all those things that, again, make the farmers market what it is and were important to the Commission to maintain and enhance. And then this is my caveat. The market's not broken. There's nothing overtly wrong with it. We just know there's things that we need to be ready to proactively address as we move forward. So that was one of the toughest things for our strategic planning effort, is looking, okay, what's out there that we do need to address? They came up with 5 major challenge areas, and we called them all challenge areas because there were 5, and we could be pretty succinct in outlining those. Specifically, none of these are in any specific priority, so I'll just go through them one at a time here. Advisory and operational expectations are unclear and lack boundaries. This is really establishing between staff and the Commission how we can best serve the Commission as staff so that they can make their recommendations to Council and so on. Talking about the planning tools that we want to put in place for them and that they feel would be helpful for them. Strategic planning, of course, is a key driver in that, and we'll continue working with them on reporting and letting them know how we move forward in addressing the goals. One of the specific pieces that we had as well are staff performance measures and deliverables with timelines so that we can stick to the course and make sure that we're getting that information so that they can do the planning to make the recommendations and so forth. So An item you'll see here shortly this evening is the market integrity and its the potential for being threatened by lack of clear policies. Each year there's an annual update of policies that began 7 or 8 years ago, I think now. So that's newer to the market. It's not something that's been there all along, but looking at how we can increase the clarity, the quality, the education, all of those things, and how policies apply to vendors. And so they're more aware of what they're getting into, and we can make that process a little bit smoother for all the vendors. So this one in particular speaks to the research that we'll talk about in a moment regarding a fee recommendation, looking specifically at the equity and the efficiency of the allocation of costs of the market. We have several different types of vendors. We have several between season and walk-on, a lot of moving parts there. And so breaking that down and doing some good research on it so we can provide the background and the foundation for both the Commission and Council to make decisions is important to us, and we feel that staff can provide that information. A couple of the things we've done so far is the initial research and submitted the information to the Commission, which has helped us develop the recommendations to bring to you tonight. Let's see here. Immediate and severe infrastructure needs. This speaks directly to the City of Moscow's goal, talking about aging downtown infrastructure, ties in very well. The idea here is to outline the concerns that the market has in regards to infrastructure downtown, really so that if there's a potential for a grant or something else that may come up, we have all the information prepared and we can show the need. And also to look at planning for future and how can we address those needs that we have as we move forward. Looking at market layout and the restrictions there, really the market layout at this time, we've been on Main Street since 2013. We know there's a lot of potential there. We're just not sure where that potential should go, and we want to be able to give the Commission the information they need to make those decisions, and that's really what this issue surrounds. So we'll be looking at different research and different information that we can provide so that the Commission can make those decisions and recommendations. So all the planning brought us to the next stage where we needed to review and analyze some information to provide a recommendation on fees. That was one of the first tasks outlined in the strategic plan and has been a specific focus of the Commission over the last bit here. Talk just quickly about the 2016 market, since we haven't given you the year-end update on that as of yet, so we'll hit some of those highlights. A lot of the programs that have been in place previously continued, with the addition of a few new ones. Listed here is kind of the laundry list of all the things you might see at the market, anything from high five programming, where you have little kids tasting vegetables they've never seen or dealt with before. The Backyard Harvest has been a mainstay at the market for quite some time now. They accept the SNAP and EBT benefits. Bike maintenance, Palouse Paws, a couple of markets where the kids could visit with pets and pet them and check them out. Just a whole host of things that we've been able to do that the Arts Department has facilitated over the years and have continued. So. And then this was implemented as part of the City of Moscow strategic planning process, the day data sheet, and it's really just a snapshot on that day at the market as to things that went on. You'll see things called out such as weather, sunny or 75, who was the band playing, several issues cropped up, what kinds of things are going on, so that we can go back and say, okay, what's an issue that we're seeing over and over and over again that we need to address, or what's just something that happens occasionally that's not a major concern. So that information and data gathering is going on regularly now. Sales reports have also been in place for several years now. This is an overview of the sales reports received to date. We had a couple of different types of vendors that were added in 2015 that are now reporting. And so you can see how those numbers have grown over the years as we believe with the reporting, people are reporting more often, or we have more vendors reporting. But we're continuing to collect that information and to work with vendors to get those sales reports in. And then this is an important thing to note, happened at the market this last year. Our market was one of the first in Idaho to accept these few Washington benefits, actually. Idaho benefits that aren't currently available to farmers markets, but Washington has extended that to our area. So these aren't full year totals, and that's specifically the Fresh Bucks, the women and infants, or the WIC, Women and Infant Children, and then a Washington Seniors Farmer Market Nutrition Program. So those amounts will probably go up in the next year as we'll have a full year under our belt, or full season under our belt. The SNAP benefits up top have continued to stay steady, and we're excited about that. And in addition, there were about 470 pounds of food collected at the market that went to Backyard Harvest and various food banks. So that's a wonderful program we have as well. So then we took a little bit deeper dive into the historic costs of the market. What we've done in years past is looked at the other departments that I would say contribute resources to the market. We went one step further and looked at the arts department budget specifically and did an estimate of market costs versus art costs, which are the two main functions of that department. So the arts department costs that we estimate are dedicated to the market are the first row there. The other department costs are the figures you've seen, such as police, fire, water, those types of things, other ancillary services, Parks and Rec, which gives us a total market cost on line 3 that range from $112,000 in 2013 up to $114,000 in 2016. Below that, we have the vendor fee revenue, ranging from $33,000 to $46,000, and that's the differences there come from additional vendors. There were a couple of fee increases along the way. There was one in 2012, but as that was in the Jackson Street parking lot, we did just the 13 to 16 to do the Main Street comparison. Looking at the percentage of fees versus the total market costs gave us that vendor percentage, and it's ranged from 30% to 41%. That was one of the items we wanted to look at to make sure that the vendor fees were keeping pace with market costs, and so it was nice to see that that was actually happening and actually increasing along the way a bit. And then they balance the city percentage there. Then we've got an average fee increase along the bottom. As I mentioned, there was another 3% in 2012, and then the 3% in 14, the 5% in 15, leading to 16. We say an estimate or an average there because there's quite a few steps within the fee structure, and so there wasn't a 5% across the board. Some fees were increased, some were created. There was a new electrical or a corner space, something like that. A new fee was implemented, but it did bring the fees up. So given that information, we came to the conclusion that we'd like to make a few recommendations. The first is no fee adjustments at this time. As I mentioned, the vendor fee portion of costs has stayed steady and increased over the years, in fact. The second item that was pertinent to that recommendation is the cost of the restrooms to maintain over the summer. Talked with Parks and Rec, and they have a budgeted figure of $857. And given that that was a fairly modest amount, we felt we could had capacity within the budget to manage that. Specifically, the Commission would like to look at a multi-year fee structure recommendation for vendors so that they'll have maybe a 5-year scope out as to what vendor or what fees could be doing. And staff is committed to being able to pull that information together for Commission review and recommendation to Council in advance of the FY18 budget. So see that information around July of this year, if accepted. The other piece that we looked at is, now that we've really looked specifically at the market operations, costs and whatnot, recommending the hiring of an interim full-time market manager, and that would begin March 1 through September 30th, so just through the end of the fiscal year, not the end of the market. We have two things that are going on there. We've got a grant that is being pursued to hopefully help cover those costs, but given that it would be interim, and for much of the budget year so far, we haven't incurred the cost for a full-time manager. The estimated additional cost would be about $4,947. So we also, between operating contingency and the capacity within the budget, have the flexibility to manage that, we feel. So some of the things we've completed, that analysis of past history, putting together a proposal for the Commission that they were then willing to forward to you this evening. They did adopt their strategic plan on February 8th, their last Commission meeting, and they'll continue working under that. And then you have vendor guidelines and policy documents, which you'll see in a moment. So we're starting to check off those performance deliverables right away, which is feels pretty good. So next steps, as I mentioned, research and submit. It would be what we're referring to it as an allocation model to capture and represent stakeholders, and that would be their vendor fees, the city subsidy, all those types of things, to kind of capture a big picture of the economic and the social value of the market, and to do that by July of 17 in advance of the 18 budget. And then to develop a multi-year plan and approach to fees to begin in the 18 market season, which would be the FY18 fiscal year budget. So with that, are there any questions?
You're the liaison to farmers market this year.
Yeah, they've really worked hard on this strategic plan and put a lot of time in it, the commission has. And I was really surprised at how low the Parks and Rec estimates the maintenance and operation of the new downtown restroom was going to be as a piece of this. And I kind of expected there'd be some sort of fee increase associated with that, but since it's less than $1,000, then it's not. I don't think it's really relevant. And as Jen says, there's money and there's flexibility in the budget to cover that. And I think they decided that because if you're going to raise fees, you should have some rational basis to do so, based on data, and not just, well, we should go up because we think it needs to go up. That maybe that's the way to approach it. And then as the next budget year comes up and we have data that can support some sort of fee increase and a graduated fee increase over a period of years, that would be the best way to approach it.
Walter?
Jim, there was a heading in there on one of the slides that the market layout is unsafe. I'll play attorney here with Rod and Gary's smiles. My client just tripped in the market, and my lawsuit's going to quote that because the city's already said this market's unsafe, and it's been that way for 2 years since the council approved this document, and they hadn't done anything about it.
I would defer to the attorneys on that one.
You're going to sue because it's unsafe, Walter? Is that what you said?
I'm sorry?
I didn't quite get that. You
I said if I'm an attorney for
He fell
somebody
down and hurt
that
himself.
falls in the market, and I'm filing a lawsuit against the city, I'm going to use this document to prove the city knew it and did nothing about it. Now, Gary, I'm using the attorney analogy just to make the point. But what about the market is unsafe? I mean, it is a public street appropriated by the city for the use of a farmer's market. It has infrastructure that we are aware is as it is 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I guess I just have a problem with stating the market is unsafe. I mean, we have the fire department check to make sure the tents are weighted so they don't blow off in a certain amount of wind. We don't allow guy wires to string out across the street. We don't. We this, that, and the other, and then you put 6,000 people in there.
Yeah, if I may.
Go ahead, Gary.
Attorneys can do whatever they want to do. Certainly,
Said it's just making a point.
I've sued a few governments in my life, and they do things like this. Every time we put a grant in, we say that the street in front of the middle school is unsafe. We need a grant to help us with that. If some child was crossing the street and got injured while that grant is pending, or if we didn't get the grant, certainly you've got the city council's opinion that that could be safer. And that's the way we couch it in terms of it's not, Main Street isn't built as a farmer's market plaza. It's built as a main street that happens to have a farmer's market on it. So you're talking about fire regulations, sanitation regulations. One of the things that we're looking at right now is the aggregate crosswalks need to be changed out. They've got pits in them. Certainly, is that unsafe? Yes. We've come back several times with grants for ADA ramps up to our intersections. Are they unsafe? Absolutely, or we wouldn't be trying to swap them out. So I understand your point. I don't think it takes away at all from this. I don't think it's going to be any windfall to a litigant that they can point at a plan that the city's trying to improve its infrastructure and say, see, they knew it was unsafe and didn't do anything about it.
Then if I may follow, then why not say it that way? Why not say that the market, and the word layout puzzles me. You know, if it's the layout, it's not the crosswalks.
No.
It's not the cracks in the sidewalk. It's not the curbs that people might step off of. The verbiage you've got in there says layout. I don't make that connection. There's another way to say it, to say that it needs improvement, that has been recognized as needing improvement or something like that, as opposed to the outright statement that the layout is unsafe. That's all.
Well,
And I don't want to belabor it.
again, if I may.
We've been here a while.
One of the reasons that we do that, and you'll notice in our city strategic plan, we put it in terms of, is this a problem? And don't sugarcoat it. Say it's a problem so we can deal with it. One of the reasons that's written the way it is we expect to ask for some grant funding. And whether it's economic development funding, whether it's CDBG funding, or whether it's transportation funding, in order to make that a better venue. So you want to put it out there that, yes, the council recognizes that it's not as safe as it could be, so give us funding.
And I wouldn't be concerned about the liability issue just on this blanket statement of it's not safe. I think you'd have to articulate what particular part is unsafe that caused any harm.
Gina?
Okay, guys, as a former commission trooper in the trenches with you, I applaud the baby you just had. It had to be just as painful. What a great, thorough, deliberate articulation of what we were working on those first couple weeks when we couldn't agree with anything. We couldn't even be in the same room together at that point. So thank you for the work. A volunteer commission, thank you. Are we ready? I would love to make a motion that we maintain the current fee levels for 2017 market season and approve hiring an interim full-time market manager from March 1, 2017 to September 30, 2017.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Gina and a second by Catherine to maintain the current fee levels for the 2017 market season and approve the hiring of the intern full-time market manager from March 1st, 2017 to September 30th, 2017.
Well, Walter?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll vote yes for this, but only because
Okay.
of the commitment in the document to look at the fee structure for the 2018 budget and to, I don't agree with Councilmember Boland that any thought of raising the farmers market fees is, I don't remember your exact words, Jim, but it's not just because. There are reasons for it. So, but I'll vote in favor of the motion.
Okay, start to roll with John.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
And I.
Okay. Thank you very much for this strategic planning and research recommendations.